Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. This is Currency Live, hosted by me, Chris Harmse, co-founder and chief business officer here at BVNK. Our mission at BVNK is to accelerate the global movement of money, unifying banks and blockchains. Currency Live is all about the people and the projects at the heart of this shift. Today, I am excited and joined by another Chris Maurice, CEO and co-founder of YellowCard, the largest stablecoin on and off ramp in Africa, and a real trailblazer of crypto on the continent. YellowCard has partnerships with major crypto firms like Coinbase and The Block, who have all opted to use YellowCard in Africa. Chris, welcome to the stage. Welcome to the stage.
My brother, it's good to be here.
Likewise, good to be with you, and thanks for joining me. Funnily enough, we are both actually in Dubai, recording in separate venues, but next time we'll have to get a studio set up for us to do this.
Yes, man, you guys got all that money now, man. You got to put it towards the studio.
There you go. We'll get that lighting to make us both look good. It's customary to kick off this with a quick fire round, and just to make sure you're awake. The rules are really simple. It's a yes or no question, and if you have to, a one-sentence answer. Are you ready? Cool. Have you ever paid for a meal using stablecoins?
No.
Is building...
To be fair, though, I don't eat that much.
Is building financial infrastructure in Africa easier or harder than explaining crypto to your parents?
Oh man, I think it might be easier than trying to explain crypto to my parents. Yeah, I think they've bought into the idea of like dollars on blockchain, but Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all of that is still, it's just
hasn't landed yet. Next one. In 5 years, will more Africans have stablecoin wallets than bank accounts?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Nice one.
Easy yes.
Will people still be using international wires in 2030?
No. I think international wires before, look, 2030 is what, 5 years from now. I think in most of the world, you'll see stable coins doing more transactions than SWIFT and international wires within the next 2-3 years in emerging markets.
Yeah. Cool. Next one. Have you ever lost sleep over a stablecoin losing its peg?
No, I think, look, we were not using UST and USDC. I think when USDC depegged, man, I hope listening made some money. That was those guys run a clean shop.
Yeah. Final question, and then we'll move on to the intro. If you had to pick one African country to win the stablecoin adoption race, which one would it be?
You can't make me pick, man. You're going to get me in trouble. I'm going to be on the next team call. There's going to be pitchforks. I think Nigeria, by every available metric, is currently winning the stablecoin adoption race. I think if I had to pick, not necessarily a country, but a region that could really utilize this technology, I would say it would be the Francophone region. It would be the one area that I think really needs this technology and should be pushing to do more. There's a lot of activity going on, but I think there's more that could happen there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's the quick fire round done. Let's get into the meat and bones of it. So Chris, you obviously have a super interesting backstory from being a finance graduate in Louisiana selling Bitcoin gift cards to in your own words, vagabonding around the African continent, trying to set up bare bones financial infrastructure. But fast forward 10 years, and today you're solving real world payment problems in Africa and doing north of $3 billion in stablecoin payments volume. Can you just give us a sense of what it was like building in the region in the early days? And what were some of the hardest moments? Were there times that you didn't think this was possible or didn't think this would succeed?
Oh man, look, we were talking about this earlier, right? There have been much worse times to be in this industry, right? I got into the quick story, right? I got into crypto back in 2013. My co-founder is the guy that would go around parties evangelizing the gospel of Bitcoin, right? He's a real tall guy, like 6'7", very sweaty, just arms out wide, sermon on the mounding Bitcoin. And yeah, I think by 2015, I was fully down the rabbit hole, right? And I was like, this is the best thing ever. This is what I'm doing with the rest of my life. We tried a number of things that worked. Sorry, a number of things in the US. None of them really worked. Most of them were hilarious. And we landed on a gift card that we were going to put in CVS, Walmart, places like that. You'd walk in, buy this gift card, redeem it for Bitcoin. And building that out, met this Nigerian guy at a Wells Fargo who was sending $200 to his family. And the bank charged him $90 to send 200. And I thought, that seems crazy, right? So I talked to this guy. Hey, have you heard of Bitcoin? It's free, it's instant, it's fun, all this great stuff. And went home and just started thinking, what would this guy's mom do at $200 in Bitcoin? Right? Like everybody in the industry loves to talk about all the problems that the industry solves. What's this actually going to do for a real person? And yeah, I just became obsessed with this problem, right? I wanted to learn everything that I could. I didn't know where Nigeria was on a map at the time. They don't teach you nearly as much about Africa as you would expect in the Louisiana education system, but just wanted to understand everything about it and started doing all this research and trying to understand the continent and the country and the currency and the banking system. And eventually realized if I want to understand Nigeria, I need to speak to somebody from there. And so I put out an ad online that said, looking to speak to Nigerian men, which in hindsight probably could have been worded better. But yeah, ended up getting, exactly what I did. And yeah, talked to this guy. This is about the point in my life where I learned that Nigerians are the most convincing people on the face of this planet. Because within about a month and a half of meeting this Nigerian man on the internet, end up in Lagos, Nigeria on a 6-day-old passport, no visa, no shots, and a one-way ticket that I spent all of my money on. And what I would say is the early days of building, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this. The early days of building are the most fun, but it's also the days that you look back at and it's just, holy crap, like how did we even get out of that alive, right? We had no idea what we were doing. Running around trying to sell Bitcoin and then eventually stablecoins in Nigeria. And yeah, I mean, it was certainly a unique experience. And I think it was really, for me, it was a big learning experience. And having not been to the continent before, having, again, not really knowing much about the continent first going there, it was a big learning experience. And I think that was when I first really started to understand the difficulties of international payments. That was when I first started to really understand how bad correspondent banking is around the world, how bad SWIFT is, right? How hard it is for people living in countries where there is no dollar liquidity and there is no access to USD. And yeah, I think we saw this immediately when we listed stablecoins, right? We started out only doing Bitcoin. Within about 3-4 months of listing USDT first, we moved over to 99% of our transactions on stablecoins. The demand is just so open and obvious anywhere on the continent and really across the broader emerging world. And yeah, it was all just things that we had to learn.
No, and I think, yeah, super interesting stories, some hair-raising moments. And I think that that kind of data set that you had launching Bitcoin on and off ramps originally, and then as you list USDT, you quickly realize how your users are actually they're using USDT, they're buying it to actually make payments. It's such an interesting way. We also saw some of that in the early days where we launched a platform, and then the users actually showed us the payments use cases, teasing them out of the platform by just going in there, buying and sending those on the back of payments. But I guess that's a good segue into really topic du jour for today, which is, I guess, the first one, which is these real world applications for stablecoins. And I think something you and I both agree on is really stablecoins is no longer just a crypto thing. You can definitely see this in the bifurcation of the regulation, where you've got stablecoin regulation and crypto regulation. And we're also seeing these real utility pop up where businesses are doing very ordinary things like paying their bills, paying an invoice, someone sending money to their mom cross border. And in many ways, I think Stablecoin utility is really, Africa is the real use case for this. I'm originally South African, as you obviously founded Yellow Card there. What are some of the real world use cases and examples that you're seeing on the continent today? You've touched on a few of them, but maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into those practical problems that are being solved for customers today using stablecoins on the continent.
Yeah, I think to your point, one thing that is still interesting to me is we didn't necessarily come up with a lot of these use cases. It's not we just had some genius idea that stablecoins can be used for this and that and invoice payments and business settlements and whatever. We offered a platform, I think quite similar to the way that you guys started out, right? We offered a platform out to people and businesses, and these guys just find their own use cases, right? People are quite innovative. They figure it all out on their own. And when we really started diving in on who are our largest customers, who are the ones that are really using this stuff, what we learned very quickly is it's businesses, right? It's businesses that are utilizing this technology every day to make payments, to move money internationally, to facilitate transactions that they're not able to facilitate through the banking system for any number of reasons, right? Because they live in a country that doesn't have good SWIFT connectivity, because they live somewhere where there's 3 correspondent banks in between them and their counterparty in India or China or wherever it is that they need to pay an invoice to. And this technology just eases all of that. And the big thing, which I know you guys do a lot of, is the stablecoin sandwich, right? That's really the big thing that jumped out very early on as the key use case that these guys are interested in. We work with everybody from banks and fintechs and financial institutions to manufacturers and food exporters and pharmaceutical importers and all of the above. And these guys just need to make payments. They need to pay invoices in India, in China, in Europe, in South Africa, in the US. They need to facilitate imports, right? We work with companies that are importing food to help feed various parts of the continent that just can't get the dollars that they need to be able to feed the continent through the banking system. They can't get the dollars that they need in the local market. And so they need to use a different technology. They need to use a new form of actually being able to make these payments to enable this stuff. And so these stablecoins are so much more than just the payments, right? It's so much more than just moving the money. This technology is keeping people healthy in countries where these payments are difficult, right? It's keeping people fed in countries that don't produce enough food to feed themselves, that need to facilitate these imports. This stuff is responsible for a large percentage of consumer good imports in various parts of the world. And I think people completely underestimate the scale of this technology and the amount of transactions that actually get settled on these networks. And so it's the main use case. We can sit here and talk about all of the specific use cases, but the main use case is we help businesses, especially in critical industries, food, medicine, things like that otherwise don't have access to foreign exchange, otherwise don't have access to dollars, to be able to facilitate payments to, again, feed and keep people healthy.
Yeah, no, exactly. The real world applications run deep for sure. I think in terms of, you alluded to some of the transaction volumes. Last year, I think stablecoin transactions did about 33 trillion in settlement volume. Now, if you tease out the payments use cases, some of these payments use cases we're talking about, that looks to be around 6 trillion if you use some of the data out in the market today. And so 6 trillion of payments TPV, and that's really across the markets that we're talking about. Africa, if you take that TPV and you overlay a report like the Chainalysis Geography of Crypto report, and you look at the top 10 countries adopting crypto or stablecoins, it's these markets. It's the markets in Africa, it's the markets in LATAM, it's the markets in Southeast Asia. And to your point, the reasons are lack of USD, lack of actual payments infrastructure to move money cross-border. Step in stablecoins, it gives you both of that, running on a better payment rail, and it gives you access to US dollars that you didn't have before. Yeah, definitely something that we're excited about. And as you mentioned earlier, there's been tougher times in the industry than there has been now. It does feel like everyone wants to be part of the stablecoin action. And then to your point, and you touched on the stablecoin sandwich, which I think is one that we can unpack a little bit further, because it sounds effectively it's just a cross-border payment. You've got stablecoin in the middle, you've got a sandwich, fiat sandwich on either end. But to do that at scale is actually quite challenging. What do you think has been stopping mainstream fintechs from getting involved until now? And why is everyone jumping on this bandwagon looking to get involved?
Yeah, look, you and I, we don't like the carbs, right? We'd pull off the fiat and just eat the stablecoin meat in the middle and be happy. But most of these guys need the fiat piece, right? They need the fiat legs. I think the big thing to realize and the big thing to remember, and one of the things that I think a lot of people in this industry get wrong is payments existed before stablecoins. There is a history of banks and things like that on Earth. And I think the idea that all of these companies that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 100 plus years are going to uproot their infrastructure tomorrow, stop using banks, and be completely on stablecoins, it's just not going to happen. You got to meet people where they are, and you need to meet businesses where they are too. And so I think the stablecoin sandwich is an extremely important piece of that, right? At the end of the day, these businesses need to facilitate payments. And look, you asked earlier about will people still be using international wires in 2030? Eventually, within the next 5 to 10 years, these guys will catch up and we'll be throwing the bread away and just eating the meat. But you got to meet these guys where they are. And the stablecoin sandwich is exactly that. It facilitates the payment for them without them having to actually deal with the stablecoins. For a lot of our customers, what I tell people, what a lot of our customers have in common is none of them actually care about stablecoins. None of them care about blockchain. None of them care about any of this stuff that we're talking about right now. All they care about is solving their problem, right? They care about, I have an invoice that needs to be settled. Can you settle that invoice for me? And that's it. If you can solve that problem for them, then they will be happy. And that's a big piece of it, right? Is just meeting these guys where they are, trying to solve that problem for them. And I think the industry as a whole is heating up, obviously, as you've seen, as we've seen, as everybody has seen, as Trump is talking about, as there was the bridge deal and everything else, right? Everybody's talking about it. It's heating up. And I think that is what's finally causing a lot of these guys that for the last 2 years have been hesitant to really dive into the space. This is why you're starting to see them really move in. And you're starting to hear on more and more earnings calls for big public payments companies that they're going to be testing out stablecoins and they're going to be working with stablecoins, settling payments on stablecoins and all of that, right? So I think you're going to see over the course of 2025, you're going to see a great infrastructure inversion. And I think for a lot of these payment companies, especially like remittance companies and companies that are sending money and working in countries around the world that don't have fantastic payment systems and that don't have US and European level payment systems in terms of reliability, you're going to see a lot of infrastructure inversion. You're going to see a lot more diving in on stablecoins, a lot more willingness to use it. And we're already seeing this. I know you guys are already seeing this. The numbers in Q4 looked wild compared to Q3, and Q1 has been terrific. And yeah, I think it's just going to keep accelerating right now on the back of like you guys raising that big round, on the back of the bridge acquisition and all of this. Now you have everybody and their brother raising a seed round for some stablecoin company. There's this new wave also coming up. And look, it'll take these guys a year, 2 years to really get pumping. But all of a sudden you have this army of, I think it was like 50 something stablecoin companies that have raised $1 million to $5 million that are just going to be absolutely pumping in a year or two. The industry looks just absolutely poised for growth. I think that for corporates, there's a lot of this stuff is happening now. I think you're going to see a big land grab for a lot of these guys. And the reality is the ones that don't do it are going to miss the boat and they'll suffer those consequences later.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it feels good to, after building the space, and I think you and I both can agree, after building the space for quite some time, to have the market come to you for a change, which is good. But I think you also touched on a really interesting point there, is this convergence of financial infrastructures. We at BVNK, we've really tried to make these two worlds, the bank payments and blockchain payments, interoperable. And I think that the stablecoin sandwich is one of those that really does this and has the potential to do this at scale. So sometimes I explain it like, if you think about local payment schemes around the world, and they're innovating at different paces. So there's some RTP, like real-time payment schemes. Think about Pix in Brazil, UPI in India, even faster payments in the UK. The US is trying to add RTP. That's gone live, and there's some stuff going through that. But they're all innovating at different paces. But what I sometimes explain is if you just take a blockchain and you connect all of these real-time payment rails together on this cross-border global payments infrastructure, you now truly do have these instant cross-border payments instant cross-border payments that you can use for multiple different use cases, as we discussed. So I really think it's probably the use case that drives true interoperability between fiat and stablecoin payment rails. And if we keep bringing the volume, the use cases keep developing, and bigger companies come into the space, we definitely going to see that accelerating trend.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the beauty of any infrastructure inversion like this is these guys have no option but to use this technology because it's so easy to recreate their technology on blockchain, right? I could make a bank tomorrow on blockchain. All I got to do is slow down the transactions by 5 days and charge you $50 every time you want to move money, right? It's quite easy to replicate on chain, right? And yeah, these guys are not going to have a choice. And you're already starting to see this, right? Which is why you're seeing Bank of America announcing a stablecoin and more activity from large tier 1 banks across the world in this industry. These guys are starting to realize this is the infrastructure of the future. This is what people are going to be utilizing. And I think the big thing that I've been pushing on is actually within the industry for people to realize this as well. I think that there is still, I think some people still believe with stablecoins that the main use case is going to be trading because that's what got the industry here, right? Like stablecoins got to 200 billion trading dog and cat coin and providing the liquidity in between. The thing is, that's great. And it's great that the industry got to this point on the back of retail trading and things like that. But that's not what's going to get it to 2 trillion. You're not going to get to 2 trillion without large corporates, without large banks, without large payment rails. So it's just a totally different use case that's going to get us to 2 trillion from 200 billion.
Yep, no, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Look, time's almost up, but I do have one final question for you. As you go through and chat to more businesses on the continent and more fintechs, actually, what is the advice that you give to wet behind the ears, green fintech walking into this? How do they integrate? How do they get started integrating stablecoin payments?
Oh, dude, you got to find a hot guy named Chris to help you out, man. A lot of hot guys named Chris and stablecoins these days, from what I hear.
There you go. You can find the Chris's and we'll sort you out. Look, amazing. Thanks so much, Chris. It's been a blast. This is Currency Live, hosted by me, Chris Harmse, brought to you by BVNK, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.